to hear from our special guests. My name is Nika Dashman. I am the founding director of Restorative Justice Initiative, which is a citywide network of restorative justice practitioners and advocates and community members who are working on a number of different levels to make restorative justice more accessible throughout New York City. And I am very excited to welcome Kay Pranis and Rios Moreno, who told me that he goes by Danny. So I will refer to him heretofore that way. And I just want to take a minute to, I'm not sure if anybody from NYU is in the room, but I want to thank NYU Center on Violence and Recovery for hosting us here in their space tonight. And I want to thank the RJI staff, Veronica Agard, and Tamara Myers from Italy. She's recording, so she maybe can't take her hand off the camera. Who are here tonight recording the event. Help yourselves to food, help yourselves to seconds if you want. I just met Danny tonight, so I'm going to let Kay do a more extensive introduction. And I think that maybe for many of you, Kay Pranis needs no introduction. She has built relationships with many people here in New York City. If you don't know her, Kay Pranis to my left is, and I'm just gonna, this is gonna be extemporaneous, Kay, I'm not reading off of your bio. Yeah, so she's really an internationally recognized sort of justice, particularly circle keeper, teacher, trainer, author, mentor to many people. She has worked with people all over the world, helping to support the development of circle practice, both in systems and also in community settings. And she was very instrumental in bringing restorative justice practices into the criminal legal system in the state of Minnesota, and probably other places since, right? But in particular in Minnesota, where she lives, starting in the 90s? Yeah, like the late 90s and aughts, is that right? Yeah. So if you haven't had the chance to sit in circle with Kay and learn from her, she does offer trainings from time to time. Welcome here in New York City, and you can find out about them through Restorative Justice Initiative's email list, which if you're not on it, but you registered for this event, we'll make that happen. So without further ado, Kay will say a little more about Danny and how they know each other.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Mika. Mika, who already had a plate full of responsibilities, said yes when I asked for some help to do this. So let me tell you how this event happened. I did training in Bogota in October. I was there for 2 weeks, all circle-based training. And Danny sat on my right for those 2 weeks and did all the translations, Spanish to English. And another gorgeous young man sat on my left, translating everything from English to Spanish. It was a glorious 2 weeks. Beautiful young man sitting next to me. And the way that we do this is an intimate relationship with your translator, because particularly on this side, I just lean in and it's contemporaneous, right? That he's translating at the same time that people are speaking, because nobody else needs to hear it. So he's whispering into my ear, but it's a very intimate relationship. And so by the end of those 2 weeks, we just loved each other, all three of us. And I've been very impressed by what was going on in Bogota. And in particular, a program that had the sort of most extensive integration of the arts that I had seen. So when I came back, I thought I want more people in the US to hear about this particular program, and I was thinking about a Zoom, a webinar of some kind. I don't have the capacity to do that, and I was trying to partner with, but it turned out that her work here was just the load was too heavy. So it never got off the ground. And then a few months ago, Melanie called me and said, I'm going to be in New York for a family reason, but could you give me some people to connect to when I'm in New York who do restorative justice work? And I said, when are you going to be in New York? And he said, August 17th. I said, oh, okay. I'm going to be in New York in August 17th. And then I asked him if he'd be willing to do an in-person session to talk about this work. But I live 1,000 miles away in St. Paul, Minnesota. I couldn't do this without the help of RJI and NYU. So I'm deeply grateful for Jill, who brainstormed with me about what are the possible places that we could find space and bring people together. The idea is for Danny to share some of what's going on with restorative justice in Bogota that he's involved with. There are two prongs to it. He actually works for the government, but he also is closely involved with an NGO, Human Partners. And it was the NGO that actually brought me to Bogota. So he's working in two different contexts with the restorative justice work in Bogota. And I'll just let him talk about what he's doing. But later in our time together, I want him to be able also learn from you what's going on here, because it needs to be a two-way exchange of information. Done.
Thank you. I can't believe all of you are here. It's a lot of people. I'm so happy and I feel like I'm very grateful for this event. When I was talking to Kay, I was thinking about staying with some people, sharing some information, that's it. And to have you all here is a blessing. Thank you. Thank you for being here. As Kay was saying, this was very random, and I don't believe in random things. I believe that things just feed when you go for something, and we actually believe and we actually love what we do, and that's why we're here, and that's why all of you are here. We were talking with Mika at the beginning of this space, and she was giving me some information about what you have related with restorative justice here in New York. And it gave me an idea, because I was telling Kay I can talk here for hours and tell you a lot of examples and stories about what we've been doing in Bogota. But first I want to hear you, and second I can send you a lot of information. So I will give you this list later if you can give me some of your details. Anyway, Mika told me that you already have most of your details, and I will send you pictures and videos and things, because as Kay was saying, we use art. I brought just a couple of examples of what we do. I didn't have a lot of space in my bag, so I brought the small ones, but we have from a mural which is made of mosaic. It's 3 floors and this big. So we have many things that we've been doing. Basically, we found in art the way to connect with restorative practices. As Kay told you, I have 2 organizations I work for. We bid for the same, but we have different approaches. So I'm going to start to tell you a bit about what we do in government of Bogota. And I found interesting that we were talking with Mika how the law works here, and how the law works in Colombia. Because around 2018, there was a group of people who was working with kids related with the criminal system. They've been working for 30 years with these kids. And they realized that that word is difficult,
Recidivism.
that one. The rate of kids who go back to the system once they get in for the first time in Colombia is around 80%, more or less. So the kid who goes in the system goes out and then back again, and then now that we're going, for example, with adults, I will tell you a bit more why. We know the kids who were already in the system when they were juveniles, and then they become adults, and then they graduate, they start growing in the system. These guys realized about this and said, we need to take the kids out of the system or give them chances to stay away from the system. And they proposed to the government of the guy who is the president now in Colombia. His name is Gustavo Petro. And he was the mayor of Bogota back at that moment. And they proposed him to create a restorative justice program for kids, for juveniles between 14 and 18 years old. That wasn't very popular. We were coming from a right-wing government, and what we were proposing is the rate of kids who go back to the system after they go through restorative justice processes all around the world is much smaller than what we have there in Bogota. We were saying, why not, to have this chance, and they gave us the opportunity to start. There was around 15 people who was doing that. What we were doing was we started talking with the attorneys and with the judges, telling them, because there is a figure, a legal figure in Colombia called the principle of opportunity. I think it's the best translation for that. And it's a legal opportunity the attorneys, the legal system have for suspending the criminal, I don't know how to translate that, like criminal offense. They suspend it for a certain time. They give the opportunity to the kids to repair the damage they caused. It's around 6 months, right? Through that legal figure, we were proposing to the attorneys, judges, give us the opportunity to prove you that restorative justice has an impact, a positive impact. And then they gave us the opportunity to work at the beginning with violence in families. Like let's say the most simple cases, we were working with this. And we started having good results, very good results. And then they started giving us more and more opportunities. Particularly, we started working with sexual offenses. And this is something that we know in many parts of the world. They say, no, it's not possible to work through restorative justice. In that case, we started having really good results, and then we started growing. Now we are 134 people working for the Restorative Justice Program of Bogota. And we've been specializing in working with topics or situations. Particularly, we have a team called PASOS, because it's a program, I don't know how to translate it, I'm sorry. Program for Attention to Sexual Offenses Situations, something like that, something similar like that. And we found that the kneeling was something very important for us to work through restorative practices through the symbolic. We started developing special teams, not only in that, but for example, we understood that kids with drug addiction or substances addictions, they also needed something special, like a special work, because then they had a different approach, they have a different interest. So we were working with the health system in Bogota. But all of this was new. No one knew about us, and actually no one believed that we could do something. But we were speaking through results. Honestly, that was what we were having. So the kids who were with us, the rate we have of kids who go back to the system is 4.3 or something like that %. So it's very lower than it was before. So speaking with numbers, people started believing in us. But many people, most of the people of Bogota, they don't know about the program. But then the legal system started knowing about us. And as we had these good results, we also opened a team for working with adults. Actually, the name of our program is a bit difficult to translate, but it is based on adolescents who are in the criminal system. But being part of that, we had the opportunity to work with adults. So now, as we started working in 2018 with adolescents, now we're working with adults in prison, and we started again with the violence in the families. That's what we're doing already with adults. And also, I was telling Mika that we were finding a big need in the city, and it was to pay attention to the situations of violence in school. And almost 3 years ago, some of us were already part of the team. Me, for example, I was part of the artistic team. We realized that we could help in schools and in the law. There is written that any school from district, Bogota is a district, will contact us if there is a situation where there is crime or illegal offense inside the school. But no one knew about us. Any school was coming to us, any of them knew that we could help them in the district. So we decided to go to the schools. We started knocking doors. Each school, by each school, the city is divided in districts, I think, something like that. So we went to the district where we realized there were most of the kids going to the system, to the legal system, during the last 10 years. So we went there, it's high in the mountain, and we talked with our colleagues from the Department of Education, and they opened the doors for us. One thing that I didn't tell you is that when we started, we were part of the Department of Government, something like that, and a couple of years later, they sent us to be part of the security convivencia, which is a very difficult term to translate. Security, relations, and justice is this department. I'm telling you this because it says that the city started perceiving us as security, right? I work for the Department of Security. And inside that Department of Security, we have the Restorative Justice Program. And we say we are back in the system. Because actually we were part, I don't know how to translate that, but it's Sistema Penal. I don't know if someone here speaks Spanish or penal system. Okay. Actually the name is the Department of Security, and after that is the direction of, can you help me? Direction
Can you say
of
it slower, just a little bit slower?
Dirección de Responsabilidad Penal Adolescente.
Like adolescent penal responsibility.
Adolescent Penal Responsibility Direction. Something like that. So that's our name. Inside that name, we have the Restorative Justice Program. So the point is, we were like a failure in the system because the penal system is against what we do. But actually, we were doing restorative processes. And the impact was so big that even when the government changed and, let's say, the politics changed to the right, they had to keep us because of the results. They said, okay, it works. What they are doing it's interesting. I mean, like, we can show that we're having good impact, because actually the security in Bogota, the ones who know about this, is one of the worst parts that we have, one of the worst topics that we're dealing with, security. So some of the positive numbers are because of restorative justice. So we started growing up and then specializing, and particularly during the pandemics, during the COVID, we had a big number of sexual offenses. It was raising unbelievably. And then we started specializing in treating that from a restorative approach. And then the results were so positive that people around the world were coming to Bogota and seeing what we were doing and seeing all of the rates going down. And then we were saying, like, we know people don't believe, or many people don't believe. And for example, many people believe that the risk of re-victimizing people in that kind of processes is huge. So we had to be very careful. We brought some people from Chile. They are specialists in treating this particularly topic about sexual offenders. Actually, there was a Chilean last week, again, training us and giving us tools for approaching specifically this topic. And now almost 50 people is working for that program inside our program. It's like one of the biggest that we have. And every day the attorneys and all the legal system knows about us a bit more, and they give us the opportunity. We also have people who is against us. We also have people who is saying that what we are doing is not necessary for the city, that what we are doing is giving opportunities to the people who don't need that kind of, or don't deserve that kind of opportunities. But what we show is just the results. And some of the results, I brought some examples, but just a bit. I just brought these three. We call them the restorative products. We call them like that. So what we do, I'm gonna keep this and you can share. For example, that's an example. What we do is we work with the 3 R's that we call. I don't know if it's exactly the same all around the globe. I don't actually know, but we work with the 3 R's, which are responsibility is the first phase. The second one is reparation, and the third one is reintegration. That's what we call. And then in the responsibility the first one, what we do is to understand what happened and to find what were the damages. And each one of these damages gives us a need, something we need to do. And based on that needs, we start in second R, which is the reparation. And for that, we use the art. We have a special team named the Pedagogical and Artistic Team. I was part of that team. I started working with the team. Actually, my main tool was the hip hop. And where we were today with Kay exploring some of the roots of the hip hop here. Exactly here. Yeah, actually that was my main tool for interacting with the kids, understanding the hip hop movement as a non-violent movement at the beginning. So some of them and some of us, we had different tools. So we had the master, and this is the second one I'm gonna share with you. We have a master in kneeling. I don't know how to translate
Needlework.
Needlework. She's a master doing that. And we had another one, for example, who is a master in statues, doing statues, like modeling, sculpture, and drawing. And there is another one who is one specialist in some of the photos that you find there. And here we will share with you also. Like graffiti, and not only graffiti, but all of the street work. Murals. There are amazing murals that we're doing. And many of them, musicians, poets, and there is a We call them like storytellers, cuenteros in Spanish. I don't know if there's translation, I think it's storytellers.
Yeah.
But all of us, we were working with the kids in second R, and that was a game changer for us. Because then the kids could connect with something they were enjoying, and at the same time, through the symbolic repairing the damage. We were working with the offenders and with the victims through art. Particularly victims found it useful work in work, and offenders were working with many things. I give you a couple of examples. I'm gonna tell you about a couple of examples, and I promise I will send you a lot.
Tell them about the ones that are going, about the shoes,
Okay.
because that's going around.
Yeah.
We've seen that.
So that one, for example, we were documenting a process of a kid who was in prison for murdering. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison, and during his sentence, he was a teenager when he was sentenced. We call that sanction, actually, not sentence. Sentence is for adults. He was in prison anyway. Yeah, it's a different word, but it's the same at the end. He wanted to do something positive with his life, and there were not many opportunities where he was in prison. He contacted us, and he contacted my colleague who works with, she's, like a professional, like the one with the sculptures, and Catalina is her name. And he told her that he wanted to connect with something his dad was doing, and his dad was a shoemaker. And he told her he wanted to learn how to do that. She was supporting him, designing brand for designing the shoes. So you will see the pictures of the process there. He was designing with her from the brand to drawing what it was in his mind, and then we were helping him having the permits for bringing the tools inside the prison because it's forbidden, and he gradually learned how to do that. He connected with his family, which is something very important for our processes. We work with the families. We don't only work with the kids, like the offenders or victims. We've had cases that for even just one, we've been working with 10, 15 people. It depends on what we identify during the process that is important to work with. So for example, with this kid, he at the beginning learned how to do the shoes, and he was supporting his family by selling the shoes inside the prison to the other kids. And he was very close, and he had time for sharing with his dad while he was doing that. It was a way of repair. What we understand for repairing is not only repair the damage that he caused to the victims, but also to give this kid an opportunity to live away from dangerous or illegal situations, right? So with this kid, for example, that was what we were working. The other one that you have around there is similar to this one. I can show you this one. I will let you have this anyway. For example, what we work in here with this one, what we work with the kids is the connection between mind and between our thoughts and our bodies, our actions, and our emotions. This kid, for example, particularly, he was the one who did this. He was a sexual offender. And the way he located, you will see in this one in particular, where he located the thoughts, the emotions, and then the actions. He was identifying that there. And the third one I brought you is also from a kid who was a sexual offender. And he connected with his family. This kid, for example, had a mom and a grandmother who were really good at kneeling. And because of the offense, which was inside his family, also what the family decided to do was to support him and to be with him. And the needling work was an excuse for sharing with them. And you will see all the details he was painting there. For us, art is just an excuse. You can find, for example, what I do with the kids when I work with them is I ask them, I tell them, what do you like to do? What are you connected with? What do you enjoy doing? And for example, hip hop for me has been this way, because many of them like hip hop. And then we write songs, and then it's just a common language for talking, and excuse for doing all the reflection that is in the middle of that. And after that, the third art that we have is the art of reintegration. We work giving the kids opportunities for getting back to their communities, but with real opportunities, because they could have something like this and all of the reflection, but if they get back to their communities and they don't have opportunities, it's very difficult for them to change the way they were living before of the process. So that's the three arts we work with. Particularly me, I went to work within schools context. So what we do, and we know for the city, and we know for New York is something similar, as we were talking with Mika. We say that what we do in restorative justice is against the culture, because culture is punitive. And particularly in Bogota and in Colombia, the culture is punitive. So we find everyday people who is against what we do. But when we tell them the stories about these kids, when we tell them what we do with them, the people, at least they respect that we're doing that, and they let us do that. So that was like the first. And then there was a guy who came, his name is Ever. Ever came with, we were part of the system, because we actually work with the criminal system, we're part of the government. And this guy came and he was talking to us not only about restorative justice, but particularly about restorative practices and how to implement them, how to be more restorative in our lives, because he was talking not only about the legal system, but about me, how can I be restorative? And even we that we were working with restorative justice, we were not very restorative in many ways in our lives, and I guess many of you understand that. And he came with an idea of talking in circles, of applying processes based on restorative circles. And then we had these encounters of offenders and victims, and that was more like a sentence circle, something like that. More like this approach from the legal system. And then at the end of the processes that we had, there was a meeting between the offender and the victim if they wanted to do that. And it was more formal. And even all of us, we were like scared of doing that. Like, that was something very formal, very for checking that we were doing that. But we were not very comfortable with that. Many of us, we didn't know how to do it. And because what I'm telling you is not that we were experts, but we were implementing this step by step. And then he came with this idea that he found that talking in circles had a special impact in what he was doing, and he was working with communities for many years. And then one day, as he's very curious and he's very smart, he was Googling circles, whatever, and guess whose name he found? He brought us all of the information, and he transformed what we were doing. It was 3 years ago. It was completely different, the impact that we were having, because then we started not only being the government, having these beautiful results and names and whatever, and numbers, whatever, but we started connecting more with the humans. We didn't only see the kids from the system, but the human who was a victim, and the human who was an offender, or that changed our approach. And he's the director of an NGO, that's what Kay was telling you. It's named Human Partners, precisely. And then I started working with them. And now I'm part working with the government, I'm part working with Human Partner. And we've been having amazing and beautiful results. And I think it's very based in that, seeing the human. That's, for me, that's the key that we've been having. And it's very based and inspired in what Kay is telling us. Last year, Human Partner decided to bring Kay. Ever was the only one who had a training directly from Kay, and he knew about the results, so he brought Kay to Colombia. He did everything, and it also transformed what we were doing that. So now we are many followers. So we have this the approach, the human approach that Kay is giving to us. In Human Partner, we are having processes with families who have been fighting for 30 years. And then we start with this approach of what happened, how is this affecting us, and what are we going to do for changing the situation. Those three questions seem to be very simple, but at the end, this is what we do. What happened to us? How is this affecting us? What are we going to do for transforming this situation? So we've been working with families, we've been working with schools. Many of the schools of Bogota now know about Human Partner. We've been working with huge organizations all around the world. And for example, we work with sexual offenders, many cases that we can avoid from the restorative approach. We've been having beautiful results also, as we had in the system, in the legal system in Bogota, and we wanted to share this with you. I have a lot of examples. I could talk here for hours, but I want to hear you guys, and thank you for hearing this. I promise I will send you pictures, I will send you stories about what we do there, and I'm very honored to be here. Thank you.
So we have a choice here about whether we go directly to questions, but I think instead I wanted to let Donnie hear about who's here and what brings you here. Briefly, what brings you here? Are you applying these ideas and in what context? So that he can hear about some of what's happening in New York. So we'll pass the microphone around. So it's really joyful for me to hear about all the work that's happening here. So there were a couple of questions that I heard, there may have been more, but how do you bring in the indigeneity?
That's an interesting question, because I didn't talk about it because we normalize it. It's like part of the things that we do. It comes from the beginning of this restorative approach. We were talking about this with Kay 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago, many indigenous communities were applying this approach in different parts of the world. And it was beautiful because when Kay came to Colombia, we were gathering with some indigenous groups that were interested in hearing a bit about what Kay was doing and to share with us some community use they have related with circles. And we were like confirming that gathering in circles is something that we've been doing for a long time. Particularly in Colombia, what I see is that we are very affected for the war we have, or the violence we have related with the guerrilla and all of this. It's been 100 years already, almost 100 years that we've been affected by this kind of violence. What we've been implementing in Colombia is trying to denormalize that kind of violence. But particularly about indigenous culture, it's just what they do when they have a conflict. And one of these indigenous leaders who was with us, she told us that first what they do is they cook in community. They do something like a big pot of soup that we do that. And then we do that, they do that big of soup, they eat together once a year. Okay, they start talking. I find it very similar to what we do when we work through art, for example, right? We're doing something that we enjoy, that connects us with this that we have, and it's with humans. We want to be connected. We want to be in community. We want to be part of a community. So all of these excuses help us to connect with each other, and I think that's what we do through restorative practices.
What are some specific Latin practices you are instilling in the program or utilizing in the program? Can you identify specifically?
Yeah, again, I don't know if it's Latin, but what we do is we bring the community. For example, the stickers that you find there are from collective art. Yeah.
Stickers over
Yeah, the stickers are there. It's called Arte, and these guys work with us. They are part of the barrio. They are part of the community, and what we do is I think the word with for many of us who've been working in restorative practices means a lot. We don't do this for the community. We do it with the community. I think that's one of the most Latin things that we do. We work with the community. And I wanted to tell you just a little example of that. There's a place called, it doesn't matter how it's called, but it's a place where the kids go when they have a criminal process. For the first 6 months they go there, they are in prison, while the authorities decide what's going to happen with them. There's just one entrance to that place. It's it's a big place where the kids are, and there's just one entrance.
There's like a courtyard.
Yeah,
So
courtyard.
the building goes all the way around, but it's an open courtyard space. One entrance.
Yeah, and the entrance is one of those, just a little one. And then the kids become very, let's say, nervous, aggressive, or whatever, between Halloween and Christmas. After Halloween, everything gets complicated because the kids don't want to be there. Obviously, at any moment, but particularly between Halloween and Christmas, everything gets very heated. And then they start doing, they were blocking the door, bringing the mattresses and setting it on fire. And then the offices, they knew the offices of the attorneys where the papers are, the second floor. They knew about that, the whole purpose. They are blocking the door, they are burning the papers, and during that time the riots inside were pretty big, a lot of violence and everything. So we were checking the this situation, this problem, they were calling us and telling us about what was happening, because after that we were having our offices, the office of the Pasos team, the one who works with sexual offenders, is there. So they were calling us, they were telling us hey guys, you're here, what can you do? Because we can bring, I don't know, cameras or dogs or electricity or police or the typical ways of security, right? What can we do there? And then we came up with an idea that is called, we call it dynamic security. And dynamic security means we take the codes of the people, of the community, for bringing security. What the kids were realizing with security, most of them are religious Catholic, and they believe in the Virgin Mary. So when they were setting fire to that door, there was a little virgin like this big, which was by the door. So they were taking her away and taking good care of her. So we were saying, what about if we use that code for doing something with them. And we built a virgin, which is covering the whole wall. It's three floors big. And we were doing it with the mosaic technique. And I say with because the kids were doing that with us. So during that time, it was 9 months that we were doing that, particularly guys who work with the Atelier, but all of that we were doing at least some of it. We were not only building a big team, but we were bonding with the kids. We were talking with them. The kids understood that we care about them, that we wanted to hear their stories, that it was important for us to understand that more than accuse, there were humans there. It was a beautiful example of how we do things with the people. After that, the kids were reporting that they were like praying for miracles to the Virgin, and the environment changed for a long time. It was almost 3 years ago. They didn't have any more riots. They didn't set the place on fire anymore, not even in Christmas. And some of the details that was inside the wall was made by the kids, like what it was important for them. So some of the symbols on the bottom of the Virgin were made by the kids. So it was a beautiful example. A couple of months ago, it was set on fire again. And it's also something that teaches us, because you cannot only leave that there and wait for it to do miracles. You have to do the miracles with the kids. So the new kids who are not familiarized with, that's not part of what they care. They were not feeling the same as the kids who were 3 years ago. So we have to do something else. So it's still teaching us, because we have to rebuild the place, but it gives us a lot of codes, of interesting information that we have to keep in mind for doing things with the people.
There was a question about what's most difficult in facilitating. Probably people in this room have more experience than I do facilitating, except training. I think that in my experience, both personally and in all of the things that I learned from talking with people about their experience, one of the most difficult things about facilitating is letting go of the sense that we are somehow supposed to make it all right, because we are so deeply socialized to believe that if we're in this role, that the burden is on us to figure it out, to have the answers, to fix things, to make it okay. And that it is, for many of us, the hardest thing to do is to really accept the idea that the way forward is through collective wisdom, which means that you automatically need to not know the answer all by yourself. That has to emerge from the collective. But you don't undo your entire lifetime of training by saying those words. You just have to keep practicing and remain mindful about reminding yourself that when somebody asks a question and you don't know the answer, that's fine. That is just fine. And they want to know, well, what exactly will it look like? I say, I have no idea. We're going to figure it out together, right? It never belongs on you to be the one with the answers, but we have an automatic thing that comes forward that we're supposed to be able to, and that if we don't, there's something inadequate. So it's undoing a whole lot of social training. Yes.
Do you think it's also connected to just the hyper-individualistic culture that we live in as well?
Yeah, and I think that contributes to it. And the way that we have conceptualized the idea of helping. Because this often comes from a very good intention, is to be there in some positive way for someone else, but it is structured in our institutions as an up-down relationship. It is not a relationship between equals in the way that we've structured it. A lot of people in those roles are trying to achieve that, but the structure makes it pretty difficult. It's so built in to the way that we train people in the helping professions, in the way that the structures are set up. So you have to be very intentional, most people have to be very intentional to overcome that in some way. I consider this work to be about cultural transformation, and really shifting fundamental beliefs that have shaped all of our institutions and all of the social training that we've had. And that I think we're in very early stages of even identifying what some of those things are that we've so internalized that we don't even know that there's actually an option about. They seem so inherent in our, we think they're inherent in human nature, and we're just beginning to be able to uncover the degree to which those are learned behaviors, and that we have a choice. It's one of the reasons I think Circle is so helpful, because it slows us down. We can move out of just responding out of behavioral pathways and actually be intentional and conscious about the possibility. There's a choice here. Which way is more consistent with my deeper purpose? So, that was a bit more than you asked for. We're at closing time. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming this evening. I've been so excited this weekend. And just so happy to be here and for us to be able to do something on kind of short notice and with so much help. And just so grateful for all the relationships I have in New York, so that when I come here, it's a joyful reunion with people that I love, and just was so lucky about that. Thank you for being here.
Maybe you'd like to say, well, you take your own microphone.
Yeah, I want to invite you guys. That's the main purpose of being here, and is to strengthen and create community. So if we can share things, please. I want to send you information. And please let us know if any of you want to deepen on any of these things that we were sharing. We'll be more than happy to talk with you, to share information, because I'm very connected with what Kay was saying, and to let go of this expert. We want to be experts in many things, and we're not. It's just we have information, and all of us have information that is valuable. If we can share this information, if we find ways of doing that, please, let's do that. Thank you for all of the job that you're doing here, for sharing this with us. I'm very interested. I want to talk with each one of you. It'd be beautiful if you were guiding us today. We were lost in some of you were lost in the Bronx. It'd be beautiful if we knew you before. Please, let's keep this community, and let me know if we can help you with something. I'll let you know, because I have already your details.
Can we visit you in Bogota?
Yes, please. Come. He knows already about the food, we went to the mountain, we went to many places, and obviously we want to show what we're doing there and to share. This is a way of strengthening the community. We go, we cook, remember.
I'm going to add there that one of the things that I experienced, or I can observe it as an outsider, is that the Latin piece was color. The spaces that they were in, the artwork that the kids were creating, things are much more colorful than they are in the U.S.
And this is something that we really believe. Like the restorative approach comes even from architecture. Like when you enter to a place, when I entered to the first time 40 years ago to that place, there was a table, there was someone sitting in front of me, right? And there was a division. Now we do everything in circles, there are no tables. And we have colors and we have art all around to inspire. Because inspiration, it comes from food, it comes from the eyes, and then after you taste what you find interesting.
I meant to say this in my introduction, but at the National Restorative Justice Conference that took place in Washington, D.C. a few weeks ago, I went to a session that was where several people spoke about restorative justice being implemented in different ways, different levels in Colombia. And one of the things that I learned, there was a speaker called Ana Cienfuegos Silvera. Do you know her? She was talking about the juvenile justice, which I guess is the overall context in which you're working in, but Charles Alfer talked about the post-conflict work that's happening in Colombia. I just wanted to name that as like a whole other layer of ways that restorative practices are right now being used in Colombia to address harm and engage in truth-telling and repair around the long conflict there.
Yeah, we work with transitional justice. Transitional justice is something that we want. Even the national government came to see what we were doing because they want to implement some similar things, because it's a big risk that we have, and it's based on the harm that we were having, which is it's difficult even to name what happened in many situations. The risk of re-victimizing people is huge, and we've been doing a huge effort for doing in the right way, but as we're learning, things have not been the best in many situations. So we want to have this. Even as I was telling you, I studied my master's degree with the IIRP here, the International Institute for Restorative Practices. And the first thing I was asking was, where are the Colombians? Where are the other Colombian students? And they were not. So this is what we need there after all the suffering that we were having there. And we're working on that, on becoming more restorative in our processes in transitional justice. We want you to own this together.
I'm sure we could keep talking. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.